Welcome to the very appropriately titled Hot House for this climate session. Rushing to climate disaster, mobilising together to resist and overcome. You know, we thought about that title and we wanted to get those words in because we think they tie in really with the theme of the day, which is actually bringing people together from all parts of the movement to deal with the severe threats that we face on so many fronts. You know, it isn't a case that climate is a separate add-on issue to the agenda. It is explicitly linked with the themes of anti-racism, anti-war, militarism, austerity, everything else that we talked about. These things are absolutely linked, and we need to be clear about that. And when we talk about climate here, we're also talking about those issues at the same time.
We are witnessing a serious rise in the far right. Trump is in power, energising fascists like the rioters from the January 6th movement, backed by Musk, the richest man on the planet, who did Nazi salutes at the inauguration of Trump. And across Europe, the far right are gaining power with fascist Melonian government in Italy, Orban in power in Hungary, the AfD making advances recently in Germany, and Le Pen in France. And now we are starting to see this global trend happening here. A recent Calculus poll showed that Reform is topping the polls with 25.8% of the vote, above Labour and the Tories for the first time. The cutting edge of their advances is Islamophobia, hatred against migrants and refugees. But where they take power, we see a broadside attack not only on these communities, but also on LGBTQIA+ communities, protesters and others. We in the environmental movement must consider this moment as our struggle. We must not consider it a deprioritised issue. Social justice is environmental justice. And as we have seen in the US, what starts as an attack on the far right's traditional targets ends with the dramatic reduction of essential measures to prevent catastrophic climate breakdown.
But last night, my housemates and I, we went to sleep prepared for a dawn raid this morning. So we'd hidden our tech. I was using an analog alarm clock, which I never do. I was wearing pajamas just in case. And the reason for this is, if you don't know, so JSO, Just Stop Oil, is part of Umbrella, and one of the groups within Umbrella is Youth Demand. And 2 days ago, Youth Demand was holding a public welcome talk, publicly advertised. It's at the Quaker Meeting House in Westminster, and the police raided the welcome talk and arrested everyone there, including 2 completely new attendees of this talk. Then the next day, yesterday, they started raiding people's homes. And so again, my housemates and I were prepared for a raid this morning, and we weren't raided, thank goodness. And I'm not sure if it's the police being either incompetent or just trying to scare us through their confusion, but this is starting to be a semi-regular occurrence. Every few months, Just Stop Oil or Youth Demand is targeted by the police, sets of raids. And it's a representation of what has been a major ramping up of repression, of civil resistance, and a major ramping up of intimidation over the past few years. We've seen the state bring in anti-protest legislation in direct response to our actions. People, as I said, are being raided at dawn. The Palestine Action, people have been raided at gunpoint. They've had their doors broken down. Just Stop Oil supporters have been charged for just thinking about action. They've been charged with conspiracy. They've been charged for speaking on Zooms about taking action. Like, this is absurd.
Poverty organisations, climate change organisations, housing, health, it's just been incredible coalition. And one of the campaigns we've done is called Energy for All, which you can see on my t-shirt, which is actually about the idea that everyone should have enough energy to stay warm in their homes, and that actually is possible. A lot of people are saying that actually renewables are causing energy prices to go up, which is a complete lie. As we know, the reason energy prices are so high is not the cost of renewables, it's actually the huge profiteering by energy firms. About £500 billion has been made by energy firms during the last 4 years. So this crisis we're hearing about is essentially extreme profiteering from energy firms.
But the conversation went along these lines. I could hear people saying, well, no, it's not because the climate crisis affects us all. Absolutely true, it does affect us all. And then the conversation progressed to, but it doesn't affect us all in the same way. There is unequal impacts of the climate crisis. And then I heard people say, some examples of how the climate crisis affects us differently. And then I heard people say, and the solutions, we can't afford to put solar panels on our roofs. And you could hear how people are talking about, actually, for working class people, the solutions to the climate crisis can never be individual, can never rest on how much money you've got. Like so many issues that affect working class people, the solutions have got to be collective, have got to be shared across society, have got to be the ones in which the money is taken from the rich and redistributed to the bottom of the society, and not from the bottom of society and then redistributed to the rich, which is what's happened for the last 30 or 40 or 50 years. I'm losing track. I know a lot longer than that, but in our lifetime, in my lifetime. And it was also a conversation in which I heard people see how the conversation could move to the right. Because I heard people say, they're forcing us to have electric cars. Now, are they, okay, all right, you can set targets in terms of electric cars, but fundamentally, if you're a climate activist, electric cars aren't the solution, but public transport is the solution. But you could see how that argument could be moved to the right. So look, it is a trade union and it is a working class issue.
The recent appeal for the Just Stop Oil case shows that is the danger that we all face. There was a colossal effort that went into the sentence reduction for those peaceful protesters, but peaceful protesters are still being locked up. And it is good that there was the unity of Friends of the Earth, Greenpeace, Just Stop Oil, XR, Defend Our Juries and others. That is to be celebrated, and we need more of this.
These are ordinary people. These are ordinary people. Lots of them are my good friends. They're people who are in prison for taking direct action, non-violent direct action in protection of human life. And they're in prison. And there's some other sentencings coming up soon. There's the Manchester 5, the Heathrow 10, and a Gantry's case coming up in the next few weeks. These people have already been found guilty, and they're facing together up to 100 or 160 years or less in prison. That's the maximum sentence that they might face. 10 years each, there's 16 of them being sentenced. 160 years. How are we letting this happen?
People that are getting cheap energy at the moment actually tend to be more affluent people who have an EV, they're on a cheap tariff, they've got a solar panel, and that's leading a lot of people to believe that actually renewables isn't the answer, but actually it can deliver cheap energy. Renewables deliver electricity for about 7p a unit. We're charged about 4 times more than that, and the difference is mainly about profiteering and waste in our system.
And I'm minded, by the way, of what Avery was saying in terms of Just Stop Oil. This repression that we are facing. But no, don't believe it stops at climate activists. And this time round, it started with climate activists. It's now expanding to the Palestine movement. It will expand to the trade union movement. Don't make any mistakes about it. It will expand wider to the working class movement. So our resistance and in solidarity with the climate activists, again, something we should take up in the trade union movement. Avery made the point, do we know the names? Are we sending our messages of solidarity? Are we understanding that repressive legislation will impact on us all? And also, while the right has weaponized this issue of the climate crisis to attempt to make it look like it's the solution to the climate crisis, or an attempt to solve the climate crisis that is causing working class people pain, that is something we have to fight back against hugely. We cannot allow Farage and Reform to make headway, dividing working class communities amongst ourselves with a belief that the climate crisis is not going to affect us all, and that somehow if we attempt to provide solutions to it, that is what is going to impact negatively on working class people. We have to do everything we can to resist this.
I ask myself the question, where is the opposition in politics right now? Where is the opposition from the Democrats in the US? Starmer needs to learn from their failure to stop Trump. You cannot stop Trump with a borders bill. You only set the terrain with draconian laws for the real draconians to take power. That's what the disaster of Kamala Harris's candidacy showed. They failed to outdo Trump, and they will fail to outdo Farage here. Yet the Starmer leadership proposes its own borders bill, rounds on disabled people and welfare cuts, and wants a drive to warfare. In the years to come, all of us who stand against racism, for people and for planet, and reject the likes of Farage and Trump, will be seen as standing on the right side of history. We have to stand for an end to the financial crisis, the cost of living crisis, and the ecological crisis, with the ruling class using racism, such as the scapegoating of refugees, to divert attention from the billionaires who caused these crises in the first place.
And I think we need to break through that fear and look at these as these are scare tactics. They're trying to prevent us from taking this action, from taking direct action, because they know it works, because they know that ordinary people have the power to change the system.
Another part of what we do is actually to do with housing. So our houses are in terrible state. So not only are about a quarter of our homes in fuel poverty, but also many people live in really badly insulated homes. But again, the government schemes to improve people's homes are incredibly flawed. So a lot of, there's a huge lack of skilled people to improve people's homes. So a lot of companies have gone out and profiteered again from these retrofit schemes, made huge amounts of money, and actually done really bad work in people's homes, in some cases making the homes even worse than when they moved in. So again, that creates a lot of negativity about the idea of insulating homes, which should be really transforming people's homes, but in fact leaves people often with damaged homes.
Starmer's doing the same in terms of the climate crisis. He's backtracked on every single policy that was promised by Labour over climate issues before they came into power. The only one that is holding is no new oil and gas licences, but you can see that they very much want to drop that as well. And he echoes the language of the right. He talks about eco-zealots. He will not put up with eco-zealots, he will resist eco-zealots, he will stop them from opposing the agenda. We're not eco-zealots, that's what's so important, that we turn it into a working class issue and an issue that the trade union movement fight on.
You must have anti-racists in the lead effectively to defeat the far right. That includes in the environmental movement, where the far right have their own racist narrative, which rounds, for example, on the Muslim Mayor of London for implementing the ULEZ, rounds on migrants, the movement of people, and on population explosion, instead of the trillion-dollar fossil fuel industries that have caused this problem. And all of our struggles intersect, especially for young people.
I mean, to be honest, I don't think that Just Stop Oil is extremely radical in terms of, when you look at historical radical flags. We're not doing anything that crazy. We're just doing some marches and throwing some paint on things. But I think that's a sign that we all need to think about how radical we're willing to be, and we all need to be more radical, to be honest. Because where does that leave us if the radical flank dies, if we let it be silenced and suppressed by the state? We know we need urgent action, and we need direct confrontation of the government and what they're doing, and that's what civil resistance does. That's what the radical flank does. It puts direct pressure on.
So what we have just launched is another initiative on top of the Energy for All campaign I talked about, which is called Retrofit for the Future, which is about doing retrofit to people's homes correctly. So we're working with a number of other organisations like the Greener Jobs Alliance, like Peace and Justice Project, MedAct, Acorn, etc., to try and get a much better way of improving our homes, so that not only can we bring energy prices down through sharing the benefit of renewables, but we can also improve people's homes so that they don't end up cold, damp and mouldy.
I'll give you the example. Just this week, the job losses were announced in Scunthorpe in the steel job losses in Scunthorpe, and you can see, Farage, etc., again, are attempting to claim that's a result of green policies and a green transition. Let's just be absolutely clear. Those jobs are not going as a result of a green transition or green policies. There are actually few green policies in place, and there are certainly no green policies in place in terms of the steel industry. Those jobs are going because of the same reason that those kind of jobs have gone over generation after generation, because of greedy, profit-hungry companies that put their hands out for government subsidies, take the government subsidies, and when they decide they can't make enough profit out of those industries, they close them down and they move elsewhere. The climate movement must stand in absolute solidarity with those workers, in defence of jobs in those communities. The answer is clearly that we nationalise those industries, not in order for a right-wing, militaristic, nationalist so we have steel to make our own weapons, but instead we should be nationalising those industries so that we can invest in sustainable production, and we can invest in the public transport system, the steel for the public transport system that we need, for the renewable energy that we need, and in broadening the number of jobs that are available in those communities. Let's not give this to the right.
The General Secretary of the NEU rightly cites years of racist stereotyping and hateful language from some politicians and sections of the media for these threats to social cohesion. And the government must wake up and stop trying to appease the far right by impersonating it. Net zero is likely to be next in line on the appeasement list, as trialled on the decisions for increasing runways in Heathrow and for other airports. News reports this week suggest that there is a briefing against Ed Miliband from inside the government. Whatever valid reservations people have about the limitations of Ed Miliband's approach, for example on carbon capture, hydrogen, new nuclear, and on airport expansion, it is quite clear that reshuffling him out of the role of energy minister will be accompanied by a wholesale abandonment on any serious green ambition on net zero. His green strategies play well with Labour members, who see him as the most popular member of the cabinet.
Honestly, ask yourself, am I ready to go to prison? Am I ready to maybe just step into the street? Am I ready to get arrested for the first time? Am I ready to really challenge the state face to face? And if you're thinking no to all of those questions, then I'm going to ask you, well, are you ready to let the UK just slip into fascism? Are you ready to let your children, subject your children to climate and social collapse? Are you ready to let more people lose their houses, their lives to floods, to wildfires? Are you ready for more people to die in this country in heat waves? And I bet the answer to that is probably no, because that's why you're at this conference today.
But we do need to skill people up. So the first demand is really to have proper training, because retrofit should be a huge opportunity to skill up people and offer really well-paid jobs with high level of skill, but we haven't invested in the right level of training to get it right. So the first thing is we need to invest in that training. And the next thing is we need to make sure that when the work's done, it's actually done to the right standards, and that the residents are involved through the process, which currently doesn't happen at all.
We have been able, through the actions of a range of us, climate activists within the trade union movement, to push forward. We made it TUC policy last year, and now we're taking it up in a whole number of national unions to get it to be national union policy. We managed to push forward the idea of a year of trade union climate campaigning and climate action. Let's make that a reality. Let's turn that into something where we can popularise the key arguments in working class communities, and we can popularise the key solutions to this issue, which will impact so terribly on working class people. Within Unison, within the NEU, within Unite, within PCS, within UCU and others, we will take it to our national conferences to support a year of national trade union climate campaigning.
This year, the doomsday clock has edged ever closer to midnight. Over the last few years, it has been getting increasingly more precarious. This represents how close we stand to catastrophes all over the world, like climate breakdown or World War III. We need to address the counterposition that is being made between green investment and rearmament. It goes that we cannot afford to save ourselves from climate breakdown until we've tooled up to fight a war that will kill us all even quicker. It is literally coming down to a choice of burn the world with fossil fuels and war, fueled by the far right, who are often funded by these forces, or repair it for a habitable future. To do that, we need to bring together climate campaigners, anti-racists, and others to form the mass movement that can challenge these forces.
If we can get our homes improved and we can bring energy prices down, then it will really transform people's lives. It's absolutely shocking that 1 in 4 households in the UK are in fuel poverty. You know, prices are 80% higher than they were before, and many people live in terrible housing that's cold, damp and mouldy. This is an absolute tragedy, and it's the foundation of people's lives. It shouldn't be too much to ask for a decent home and affordable energy, and that's what we all keep fighting for.
There is the COP in Brazil. COPs have not come up with answers to the climate solution, not at all. But this is a COP that takes place in the Amazon. It is symbolic of what is happening to us in terms of the climate crisis. It's also at a time when the far right, when Trump, Farage and all the rest of it are trying to push away from any action on climate change. So one date that is already out there is for a day of global international solidarity on the 15th of November. Let's make that a day when we are on the streets in our numbers to show that there are solutions to the climate crisis, solutions that will benefit ordinary working class people, but it is a fight that we need to win. Let's make sure that we're on the streets and invite as many people as possible to get involved with the year of trade union climate campaigning. Let's stand along climate protesters. Let's build a movement that really can bring the changes that we need so urgently. We have a world to win. We clearly have a world to lose also.